Hi, everyone. This is your new podcast, sort of, live from Houston, Texas. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of What Makes You Tick. I'm really excited you're here. Before we dive in, just a few housekeeping notes to make this a great experience. First, this is an interactive live session. You're encouraged to participate, ask questions, and connect. To ask a question, just drop it in the chat. We'll bring key insight to the conversation. We'll use LinkedIn DMs, although I'm not very good at that yet, so don't hold me to it. We use LinkedIn DMs and the comment section for the event posting for any behind the scenes coordination. If you feel free to message, just go ahead and message, even if it's a technical question or anything that I might be able to handle, may not. If you get disconnected, simply rejoin. There is time to time LinkedIn will drop you. We know that many of the listeners are commuting perfectly fine. Just engage however you can. Even quiet listeners are an important part of our community. So first of all, thank you for being here. Now let's get started. My guest today is a gentleman I've had the privilege of getting to know over the last 4+ years. First, a big part of the Woodlands Chamber, and then as a friend. He has an interesting background. He grew up in a military family, went to grade school in Holland, high school in Alaska, college in Oregon. Man, I'd love to just go see those states.
They were all beautiful.
I know. I'm looking at that going. But out of college, he decided that wasn't good enough for him. So he decided to go work for a Texas politician, a naval officer, 12-term Congressman Charlie Wilson. What an opportunity. Yes, the Charlie Wilson that was played by Tom Hanks in the movie Charlie Wilson's War. Mm-hmm. He also served in the Army National Guard as a paratrooper. Thank you for your service, and thank you for not falling out of the plane. Before spending 20 years, before that, he spent 20 years in the telecom industry. He then spent a decade making an impact on businesses in the Woodlands as the CEO of the Woodlands Chamber, which is how I met him. Mm-hmm. In his spare time, I don't know how, but in his spare time, he competes in endurance races such as the adventure racing and Ironman Texas. He loves golf, and we were joking about this before. He still hasn't invited me. He'll say yes, but I disagree. And he spends time in various. If you live in Houston, the Woodlands, there's all these venues. He spends a lot of time in the venues of Houston for great entertainment. Today, we get the insight on business, politics, family, and the Houston entertainment scene. And for the episode of What Makes Him Tick. Join me as I welcome the entertaining, the engaging, the impactful JJ Hollie. JJ, thank you for being here, sir.
Bryan, your introduction is way too generous for me. Thank you.
Look, I got to do something because the background is cutting off my hair and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like you're in one of those Star Trek episodes. You're about to get beamed up by Scotty, I think.
Oh, goodness. If you're out there, chime in. Would love to have a comment from you. The premise of this podcast is to talk about trust and clarity and traction. First of all, we're going to start with briefly. How did you get here to the Woodlands?
Well, you mentioned my background, and because my dad was in the military, I grew up all over the world, and but he was from Mississippi. My mom was from Brownsville, and always maintained land in Nacogdoches County, which is in deep East Texas. So, Lufkin, Nacogdoches, a little town called Woden, Melrose, and we lived way back in the woods on a little dirt road. And so that was always our base, even though we got to see all these great places and go to all these and see all these neat things. But I actually did my first year of college when I graduated high school from Alaska at Stephen F. Austin in Nacogdoches. So Axon Jacks, anybody that's out there from SFA. But I learned quickly that my football talent was not going to take me very far, even with SFA being a Division II school. I think they won the national championship or played in it the year or two after that. So I looked at getting back at getting to play, and so I had to go to an extremely small school out in Oregon. But the way that ended up, family was all back here in Texas, all the aunts and uncles, cousins, and everybody. So I was able to get an internship through Pacific University, where my last semester of school, I got to intern. So I
Hmm.
just called up Charlie Wilson's office because he was my home congressman. And I thought I'd have this lengthy application process, have to write essays and all that kind of good stuff. And I said, hey, I've got this deal. I can do an internship. And they said, great. When can you be here? I thought, wait, what? I don't need. No, they said, no, show up. So January 4th of 1990, or 1991, drove home from Oregon to Texas, repacked up, spent Christmas with the family, and then drove
Hmm.
on to Washington, D.C. and interned there. And then when I graduated, just came back home and then got hired by Charlie on his staff.
And then you end up here in the Woodlands from that?
Yeah, Charlie retired in '96, so I spent the last 6 years of his career with him on his staff.
Yeah.
And then I went to work for a telecom company local to Lufkin Conroe. In fact, people knew it as Lufkin Conroe Telephone Exchange.
Correct.
Now
Yeah.
it's called Consolidated Communications, and spent almost 20 years there. Started in Lufkin and then moved to Conroe in '07, and then moved to the Woodlands in 15 whenever I started working for the chamber.
Right. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. What position did you play?
I play quarterback.
I was going to guess lineman. I mean, you look like an offensive lineman, dude.
Oh, geez, I'm not near big enough to do that. No.
No,
I thought I could throw the ball.
I'm laughing because I don't know that I've heard that part of the story. Because for me, I did the same thing. I went to Henderson State University,
That's right.
and I was a
We've talked about
skinny.
this before because you were a baseball player.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was 125 pounds trying to play catcher in college.
Ooh.
It just didn't work. And growing up, look, go Tigers. You can't.
There you go. LSU
Yeah,
just
go
won the national
Tigers.
championship. Congratulations.
I was fortunate enough to have a conversation when I went into coaching with Skip Berkman because I grew up there and he started the program. That man was amazing. But I knew I couldn't play there. There was no way. So I'm like you. I still went to Nicholls State and ended up going, huh? You cut me? What?
The
But it's
talent
fun.
is very, very deep. It's amazing. Those guys that are playing Division I sports, or ladies, men, women, they are just Division I is amazing. And I've never really gotten a chance to do anything in the professional level, and I can't imagine, knowing how good those guys are at Division I, how much even better they are in major leagues and NFL and stuff. It's crazy.
No, by the way, Carolyn Gray says hello.
Oh, hi, Carolyn. I haven't seen you in forever. I hope you're doing all right.
I've seen her a couple of times out with the Cup of Joey group that we do. So she's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead
She's
and get
one of
into
my
it.
life coaches.
Oh, she is? She's a
Yeah.
great life coach. She gives some of the
yeah.
best advice.
She's very good. She's very patient with me. And I need a lot of patience. I'm like a, grown up toddler.
Look, I can relate. I mean,
She'll
look at me
confirm
with
that.
my hair.
That's
I'm
when we
going
get
bald. No,
along.
I'm not. This video, I've got to fix it at one point, but I'm not bald. Now I am. Whatever. Big forehead. And you're talking about East Texas. The guys that I coached with when we first started were from East Texas.
Yeah.
Boy,
Yeah.
some of the stuff I'm not going to say some of the boy.
No.
Come over
Yeah.
here.
That's right.
He was awesome. Jim Dahl and Joe Dahl, awesome
Yeah.
people.
I love the experience of being in the country in East Texas, and because I've got a lot of family in Longview, Marshall, Carthage area, and it's just something where there's just a salt of the earth stability, kind of a I don't know, uncomplicated approach to things, just sort of a real kind of common sense, and they're all about treating people right.
Yeah. No, and it's not much different where I grew up. The only difference is, hey, boy, and where we go, yo, Shaw, what's up? That kind of stuff. With like a little cross between a ghetto and a Cajun is where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into the program. One of the things that for me made a huge impact in my life, and I still love it. I'm addicted to running and listening to books. And about 3 or 4 years ago, I started taking notes. Now I've got almost 100 pages of notes, which I need to clean up because it's not doing any good. But I look back and I know that some of that made an impact. Is there like a book that made an impact on your life?
I will be totally honest with you. I'm a horrible, horrible reader, and Carolyn will tell you she has told me more than once that leaders need to be readers. I'm not really good before I got married and had kids, I would read a lot.
Yeah.
8, 9 o'clock, I'd shut things down. I'd read, novels, fiction, nonfiction. One of my favorite books is about the dreadnought battleships in pre-World War II or pre-World War One, and how that all grew into all those, the history. But ever since then, I find it extremely difficult and this is my fault. I've got to be the one to fix that, but to carve out some real private, quiet time where I can just, kind of sequester. I try to do it at work, try to get there
Mhm.
early, try to do it at
Mhm.
night. But what I've found out is that I am a little bit better once I get in the car and I listen to an audiobook. So I'll use Blinkist, and
Oh, yeah.
they take a book in 15 or 20 minutes, especially if it's one of those kind of professional books, nonfiction deal. What I try to do is get 2 or 3 nuggets out of it.
Right.
And
Right.
then by the time I get to work, it also sort of, instead of listening to music, it's a productive time, but it also gives me a chance to sort of, I don't know if mellow out's the right word, but kind of focus a little
Yeah.
bit and kind of
Yeah.
say, okay, how can I apply this today?
Yeah.
And, and I can't think of any good examples now, obviously, and under pressure can't handle it. But I will say this, it's something where when we were at the chamber, we implemented a strategic plan. And if you guys have all done that, strategic planning can be one of the worst exercises an organization can go through,
Yeah.
or it could be one of the better ones.
Mhm.
And through it's called the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And we read a book called Traction. And it really simplified and applied the principles of strategic planning. And it also kept it alive. I've been through 4 or 5 of those plans where you spent months in a room and you put together a 2 or 3 inch biter, and then it just sat around gathering dust. But this is something where it really applied every day, weekly, to who we are, what we were doing, what kind of organization we wanted to be, and what we considered to be successful. And so that if I was to, be pressed to say, hey, what's a great book, especially for your business, it would be Traction.
Traction. I just wrote it down. I'm looking
Yeah.
for me, like, man, why don't you listen to them on your runs or when you're engaging in that?
Well, good question there too. Actually, after I did the Ironman in gosh, it's been 10 years ago, 2014. I continued to run. I thought I might do a second Ironman. My goal was or my dream was to go do one in like Zurich. So my buddies went over there. If you live in the Woodlands and you have any sort of endurance interest at all, you owe it to yourself to do the Ironman. You just need to. It's local. It's great.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
don't have all those travel logistical issues. This poor guy, one time, he was from Britain and lost his wallet, passport,
Oh,
everything. I still don't know if that guy got home or not. I mean, it's just crazy. But
oh,
and the community is phenomenal. The
yes,
county supports it, the township supports it,
yeah,
the residents support it. But shortly after that, I would go for a run, and my knees were just killing me. Well, lo and behold, after football and wrestling in high school and army and all that, I don't have enough cartilage to really run. So that's why my enjoyment hobby now is going to play golf, and then I have to do all this working out stuff so that my knees stay together. And I don't know. I'll probably need a knee replacement whenever I'm 60 or 70. Who knows?
yeah. No, okay. So, real quick, a side note:
Yeah,
did you watch the golf yesterday?
I watched the last couple of holes, and I
Did you
saw where
see what
Keegan
happened at the
Bradley
end?
made the birdie putt to win it, and what's his name? The guy from
Mahaffey,
England. What's his name?
Mahaffey, right?
No, one Mahaffey. It's
Oh,
he's got kind of the long brown hair. Great
yep,
golfer, great guy,
yes,
but he made a bogey, and Keegan Bradley, who's going to be captain for the Ryder Cup this year, which is
uh,
interesting. And so they're talking about, is he going to be a player coach, which is a whole nother discussion. But yeah, made the birdie to win it. And the other guy the third person in their group, he chipped in for a birdie.
I saw that. Yeah. He was in the rough early.
Oh
Crazy
yeah,
stuff.
just nuts. It was great. It was like watching the last 2 minutes of a football game. That's where all the exciting stuff happens.
So the funny thing is, I'm sitting there watching LSU baseball win their
Yeah.
championship yesterday.
Yep.
Again, go Tigers. And I'm sitting there. There was golf on one of the TVs. We're at tailgaters with a group of guys, and there's this on TV, and literally one of the guys goes, "Hey, how much golf do you watch?" I was like, "I don't watch much, but I do watch it occasionally." This was early in the day, and he said, "Watch, what's his name? God, his name is escaping me. He's leading. He's going to choke." And literally, he missed the putt at the end. They were all gone. I was there. Me and Gary Green. It was with Gary. Me and Gary were sitting there going, "Are you kidding me?" And no. Let's get back to the discussion because we'll talk sports all day.
Yeah.
I did want to mention one of the books, if you haven't read it, was and we talked about this briefly, was The Ripple Effect by Steve Harper.
Yeah.
That was one of the first books that I started to kind of record. And it was, I looked at it today, I went back at the notes and looked over my notes. And it was funny because one of the first things I had up there was describe how your actions can trigger, the ripple effect kind of describes how your actions trigger a chain reaction and spread outward through others. And it's important to have that positive spin. And then you approach it as if you're going to make all the impact in other people's lives. But at that moment, the opportunity is there for you to do it. It might not happen. But later on, even if the moment is not there, the spirit and the energy that you bring will stay with them. And I'm looking at my notes going, that's like some of the changes I made or I decided consciously, but I didn't know where it came from. Yeah. So that's the memory piece that I don't have either, but that's another story. We can talk into that later. So trust. We're talking about trust and building trust. And I always find it hard whenever we're with people. And actually, I take that back. I don't find it as hard anymore. I had a discussion with a guy today about trust and how important it is to build trust because I taught for so long. So I know, this year going into and meeting the kids and being with the kids, I might be the only positive energy they see in a day. Yeah. So I'm going to bring that, and it might be the only moment. And they may not remember me, but they may remember that moment. Yep. And I found that important, and it's carried throughout the things that I've done over the last couple of years, I guess. The other piece was building trust. And the guy asked me today about building trust. And I said, all I do is I give it to them. That's it. It's their job to understand what to do with it. I'll help them. If they screw up, then I forgive them or I label them as what that is. I try not to label them. I find that very, it's like, okay, boom, I've checked you off. You're done.
Yeah.
For kids,
you don't want to pigeonhole somebody.
Yeah. And in business, it works the same way.
Oh, yeah.
But you never know who anybody is until you trust them. And then they'll show. So have you ever, how do you deal with something like that where you have somebody has different values or beliefs?
Before I try to think of a good example that's, poignant, there's a guy who I got to know named Ken Proctor. Yeah. Who I've really been impressed with Ken. And one of the things I went through, he's got a program called Art of the Question. And one of the things he said is people will remember how you made them feel. They'll remember much more. And he said, it's more important to, oh gosh, he's going to get on to me if he hears this, but it's more important to be respected than liked. And another element is one of the closest thing to people feeling loved is feeling heard. And when you think about it, our personal and professional lives and experiences and relationships, if we feel heard by somebody, then we feel we feel like we've endeared that person to us. And one of the things that it really brought home to me was whenever I talked to people and whenever I had employees at the chamber, or whenever I was working at Consolidated, I think I probably talk too much. I probably talk too much today. Uh, but if you add, if you really think about trying to ask people insightful questions,
Yeah.
and not just, questions that are not authentic, like, what's the most poignant moment you've ever, what's the biggest challenge you've ever had in your life? That's not a good cocktail party question, right? But if you ask
Right.
people about themselves, everybody's favorite subject is themselves, right? But if you are genuinely interested in somebody and learning more about them, hey, who are you? What do you do? What makes you tick? It's a whole lot better than trying to make yourself be so, the most interesting man in the world.
Yeah. It's being engaged in your conversation.
Yeah, and
Are,
it's
are, are
it's
you, most
caring.
people get so nervous, they figure, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because we've been out in public a lot,
Hmm.
but it feels like people that are fake are the ones that are sitting there like, are nervous, are the ones that are sitting there thinking about what they can ask you instead of actually listening to what you're saying.
Oh, yeah, and I'm guilty of that. How many times have you asked somebody what their name is, and then 10 seconds later, you can't remember it?
Dude,
I mean,
I'm the king of that. You can't
oh,
compete with me on that one.
it's so horrible. And it is when you're in a crowded room, at a reception or, whatever, to really be focused on somebody and not
Yeah.
always looking over their shoulder to go, oh, hey, what's the next person I'm going to talk to? And, you might miss somebody you want to talk to, but you can't just disengage. And frankly, it's, be disrespectful to the person you're with and go, oh, I'm done with you. I'm going to go on to somebody or something better, quote unquote.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, how are you making them feel? If they feel heard, if they really feel engaged, like you're engaging, then, and that's something whenever I would work at the chamber. I always talked about, we work together, we work with each other. Nobody works for each other. And by the way, if you really want to get down to it, if you're managing an event,
Yeah.
then I work for you. I mean, there's, a couple of times, we had the health and wellness fair at the chamber, and one time we had goat yoga. Well, myself and
Wait,
one of my
hold
board
on. You had
members,
what?
we had goat yoga on a Saturday morning at Market
Greatest
Street
of all
as part
time,
of the
right?
health and huh?
Greatest of all time.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but oh gosh, thankfully the weather was nice, but we had
Hmm.
these little goats out there, cute as they can be, hopping up on everybody. Well, Steve Barry and I, one of our board members who works for Waste Connection, and we were out there supporting the event because we're out there supporting the chamber staff person who's running it, so they can run it, and we do our part. Well, we got the job to be pooper scoopers for the goats because it was just what needed to be done. So we went and we helped out.
You're waiting in
But
your
it
suit,
was,
right? You had
huh?
suit and tie, right?
Oh God, not on that day. No, 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 no. Thank goodness.
I'm a poker
No,
scooper
it
with a
was,
suit
it
and tie.
was, it was, thankfully it was shorts and t-shirt. Uh, but yeah, so that was our little job. They were doing goat yoga, and we were sweeping up after the goats and taking care of stuff. And that's when you work with people and you kind of have that. Hey, we're here to serve each other, help each other. At the end of the day, we want the organization and the event to be successful.
Yeah, and you never know. Look, being here in the Woodlands, one of my favorite stories I like to tell is, and I'll make this very short and quick. We were invited early on the first couple of years. We were invited to a fundraiser event, and as a coach,
Mhm.
it was one of our players' dads that invited us, and we go, and I'm sitting there at the blackjack table playing blackjack, play for an hour. My wife at the time wanted to play blackjack, so I'm like, okay. I wanted to play poker and other stuff, but she wanted to. So we're sitting there playing. We're having a conversation with the guy. We talked to him for an hour, and it was just normal conversation. And it ended up being Ed Too Tall Jones play for the Cowboys.
No way. Oh, wow.
But
Gosh.
but there's, when you get in there and you start to really know people and you have these open
Yeah.
conversations, you
Yeah.
open up people that you don't normally know. And
No.
I've always struggled with, being out of the Woodlands or being from where I'm at, Baton Rouge. You mentioned a lot of things, and
Mhm.
people have these preconceived notions about what it's actually like. Like I've had I grew up in Baton Rouge. You know how many times I've had the conversation if I went to school in a P row?
That's great.
Oh, look, let's do a quick reset. Look, I want to welcome to you to What Makes You Tick, an authentic, relaxed, purposeful conversation about trust, clarity, and traction. Why? To help incorporate a purpose into what you do and the impact that your life has on others. How do we do this? By sharing business and personal stories on building culture of trust, creating a clear, impactful message as a leader. At some point, we were both leaders, with insight on how this can build traction within your life. Today, I'm having a conversation with JJ Hollie, former CEO Chamber. What are you doing right now? What do you want to, I'm giving your spot. Give me your pitch right now.
Thank you. Doing some consulting, had a lot of relationships that have been built over the years here in the Woodlands, Montgomery County, Harris County, Austin, et cetera, and just helping people kind of navigate the local governmental agencies. Or I had somebody who was a restaurant that said, we're having a horrible time with the Woodlands health inspector. Well, it turns out there isn't such thing as a Woodlands health inspector because the Woodlands is not a city. So we know things like that. And my corporate experience, political experience, nonprofit experience, just trying to help people develop their business, government affairs, different things like that.
Good. No, awesome. So if you've got any questions you want to ask JJ or myself, please chime in. I can read.
This is better if we get questions. Carolyn, she asked me a good question.
Yeah, I know. Maggie joined in. She said,
Maggie.
Great. Hold on. Okay, watch this. This is where I'm entertaining. Beautiful advice. Thank you, Maggie. So we'll keep going. We've got tons of topics that we'll never get to because both of us like to talk and hear each other. Actually,
we've never had a problem with that.
No, listening too, same thing. What is, some of the most impactful moments of your life? Give me one like that made like for me, it's divorce, but it was the way I approached it. It wasn't anything else.
Yeah.
What do you think? What would you attribute? Is there a time where you had a change in your life?
I will tell you this. I think it's easy to be, pessimistic or, I can't think of the right word, but, kind of a know-it-all type thing, especially whenever you're young, 21 years old. And this goes back a ways because this is when I was working for Charlie, but it was so impactful. I can hear him say this to me now. And part of my job was to drive Charlie Wilson around to all over East Texas, from Orange, Beaumont, all the way up to Nacogdoches and all the way over to the border of your home state in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And we were in Woodville, or Woodville, as they call it if you're local.
Yeah.
And we were way back out in the woods, and it was just Charlie and I, and he was speaking to some group somewhere, but I remember just driving down, like these little, it was almost like a dirt road type deal. We got there and Charlie gave a speech and he talked about, and me, I'm a recent political science graduate, I must know everything, obviously. And I don't know if I'd call it, not jaded, but sort of just thinking everything's contrived, right?
Yeah.
Well, and Charlie in his speech, he talks about before Social Security and before senior citizen centers, people just sat on their front porch and waited to die. I mean, literally, once you got done working, there was nothing else for you to do. You just kind of sat there and rocked on your chair. There was, and I thought, man, that's a good line. So Charlie and I got back on the bus and we're driving out, and I said, Charlie, that was a great line that you said. And he knew what I was insinuating.
Right.
Which was that he was just sort of saying something to evoke some emotion or whatever. And he got mad at me. He was like, it's true. That's true. And he went off into a 5 or 10 minute deal about how senior centers and how supportive that and helping old folks and how it made their lives longer, made their lives fuller, And I thought, whoa, wait a second. Being genuine, being authentic is something where this guy knows what he's talking about. And he lived that. And it was something that was a great example to me.
Wow. No, and it's funny because that authenticity has become a hot word lately. Genuine, being genuine. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, like that was a great explanation of how that works, but I wonder if there's enough people out there that do that. I read an article today. One of the things that they're seeing now is because I'm looking for a job. I'm a teacher. I've still got a teaching job. I'll teach. I'm not anything, but just something that I can make a different impact in a different manner. And that's the first time I've said that out loud. So there you go.
Okay.
But
That's good though. You
yeah.
know?
And, there was something today about AI and how people are using AI to generate. Now I use it, but it's got to be my authentic word. I can't just copy and paste stuff. People are doing their resumes it's a much better way. It's very quick, but you have to make sure that it fits who you are and it's not creating lies.
Correct.
That's fine. But there's people out there that are creating and buying AI that will help them apply for jobs automatically.
Yeah.
And there's people creating other false personas and creating. I'm like, how? If you've got all of a sudden 400 applications within a day, how can you look through that? Because that's not all those people are really looking for that job.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a whole element of people both applying for jobs and people that are screening resumes and how that's done. And we hired people for at the chamber, and I hated the whole going through every resume. And thank goodness Gina Mitchell, who did our operations and finance at the chamber, she would go through every one of those, and 100 resumes would come in for every position, and she'd narrow it down to 15 or 20. And it always seems so unfair to boil a person down to a sheet of paper.
Correct. Yeah. Because it's all about the person.
It is. And we were much better in hiring when we hired people who were recommended to us by chamber friends and members who knew us. And then it was better than somebody just, kind of right off the cuff. And we still had some success with that, but it was always better when we just got to know the person.
Right. And look, I resemble that. Most of my jobs, the funny thing is when I first moved up north from Clear Lake, I lived there for a year, moved up here, applied for a job, new people, they wouldn't hire me. The principal wanted, but the other people wouldn't, because one, I was a coach and I'd never taught biology or taught life science. So they didn't want to take a chance on me.
Yeah.
I ended up after 2 more years, like, that's what I do. And I can get a job because I've done it now. And I could have done it back then. I was committed. So they missed out on who I was.
Yeah.
Looked at the accomplishments. The job I had at Gordon Foods, I knew somebody, got me an interview, and they were skeptical. But I came in, and within 2 years, I was one of the leading developments. And I remember one of the businesses I have, I've got a bunch. Like, I went and visited one. One's going to be on here. Ulysses, he'll be on here. He's a restaurant owner. But I went into McKenzie's barbecue, and it was really about developing a relationship. I had no chance. He'd been with another company, I won't mention him, for years. He said, "You're wasting your time." Do you know I got that account?
Yeah.
But it wasn't me trying to go get that account. It was simply because it was me trying to find my people, and I found my people.
In an authentic way.
Yeah.
I mean, almost no matter what we do, we're all in sales.
Yeah.
I mean, either, we were selling memberships and sponsorships at the chamber, or we were, I was doing business sales, or I was doing internal sales with Consolidated because I was a product manager and I was trying to get our field technicians and our customer service reps to believe in the product and support the product and sell the product. Or when you're trying to go out there and get, people to vote for your congressman, you're still, it all boils down to having that genuine relationship and really talking to people. And that was the deal. You also have to back it up.
Yeah.
When we had field techs and they would say, "Hey, we're having a problem with this piece of equipment, that we're deploying." Well, I wouldn't just give them lip service. We would get a team together. We'd get with the manufacturer and would figure out how we can solve it. And then at the end of the day, we made their lives easier. And they also knew they could trust us to take the information back and at least try to make it better.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want anybody's job to be hard. I mean, why make it harder than it needs to be?
No, but it's also listening to your customers. Like, my son's building a business, and my biggest question to him, he asked me today about a person that I know that wants us to do some work. And he asked me after she sent a text, "Hey, this, and this." And I said, "Look, here's how you have that conversation. You need to have it. I'm not. Yeah. This is yours. You have to be able to willing to go out and learn and listen." I would have never done it. I'm looking at this dude. He's 18. I'm going.
That's good. Yeah, you have to learn those social skills.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
No, the funny thing is, and have we ever talked about my cheerleading days?
I don't remember your cheerleading days.
Okay.
But I'm getting a really funny visual right now. I can't get that out of my head.
Okay. So I was playing baseball. I played 4 years, and I was taking a gymnastics class of all things, and I could do those things. I could do flips. I could do a round off back
Oh,
handspring.
really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Golly, that's talent.
Well, one of the girls, it was my sorority big sister, said, "Hey, you should try out for cheerleader." And that reaction you had, I won't tell you what I said because this is going out nationally,
Yeah.
but my impression of what cheerleaders were, I was like, no, that's not me. I'm not going to do that.
Yep.
She persisted. I ended up trying out, and what it was is we were a squad of 5 guys, 5 girls, and we went to camp. We went to camp that year with LSU and Arkansas. We'd gone to a pre-camp. Arkansas had come down. We hung out with them. Dude, it was the best thing I ever did because of the social aspect. I never understood the athletic aspect of it until I was in there.
Yeah.
The girls flipping around, watching LSU, watching Arkansas. That night we were in Tennessee, and we walked to a place that served. Let's just put it that way. We got really Arkansas and LSU cheerleaders knew who we were after that. So we did make an impression somehow.
Yeah, there's some cheerleaders don't get the right kind of props for what they do, and it's dangerous too. I mean, good Lord, those flips and those things that broken bones, concussions, I mean, all that kind of stuff. You watch that talent and and picking somebody up and balancing them on one hand. Oh my gosh, I'd much rather play football. There's no way I could do that.
No, it was a blast though. I mean, it's much better to hold a girl than a guy. Hold them up and go, "Hey man, you got score." It's much better to hold a girl. Hey, how you doing? No,
Yeah.
Look, we got about another 10 minutes or so left. I don't mind if you don't mind running over. I always do because I talk way too much. Look, thank you for listening to my third podcast, What Makes You Tick. JJ and I are having authentic, purposeful conversation on trust, clarity, and the things that have made an impact on our lives and how we can make one on yours. Look, send me if you have engaged with you for the last 10 minutes. So far, we've had a great conversation about books, about reading, about cheerleading, funny stories about how, riding around with a congressman and the impact they made. Real quick, though, look, for me, one of the focuses, I said divorce had an impact on me, cheerleading. There's been a lot of things that have failure, though. Like that's been one of those things. And you'll see in some of the posts I put on LinkedIn, it's about how to face failure. Is there, how would you advise somebody to face failure? What would be your perspective on that? Or should they see?
I'll start at the beginning. Strange place to start, right? Even before failure with starting something. And I think in so many different ways, people are afraid to start something because they're afraid they're going to fail. Right. And I firmly believe that you got to do stuff that's just, you feel like, hey, I might not be able to do that. I mean, I got the job at Charlie Wilson's office. They asked me, could I drive a travel 40-foot motorhome? And my answer was, sure. I had no clue how to do that. But my uncle owned a trucking company. And also I knew this was a great opportunity. I was not going to not get that opportunity just because I didn't know how to drive. So I went down to my uncle and I said, hey, can you teach me how to do this? And my Uncle Bob was great and he helped me out. Ironman was kind of the same way. It was something where, it's 140.6 miles. It's a swim, it's a bike, it's a run. And it's something where you got to make a commitment to train for it, but there's still that fear factor of anything could go wrong and you could not, things could not go well. I would say that before we get into the failure conversation, think about, logically, right? And we don't do anything really, 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 out there. But hey, don't be afraid to do something. In fact, do something purposely that kind of scares you.
Show up.
Well, and do it. I mean, don't sit back and go, oh, should I do that? Should I not do that? Go ahead and do it. And by the way, you might fail. If you do fail, well, then you got to own it. And then you got to go, okay, what did we do right? What would you do wrong? There's a great line in the Top Gun movie, the first one, that, every good pilot is, has to ask themselves how they could get better, what they did wrong. And, if you're in a good organization or you've got good people around you, they will help you figure out, hey, here's some, because none of us are perfect, right? But here's some missing, links like mine. Hey, don't read enough. But here's some missing links. Here's some things where you could, you know, sand off some of the rough edges,
Yeah.
and you need some people in your life that can be like, hey, yeah, you really messed that one up, and then how
Yeah.
you fix it.
No, and look, that's important. What you said is showing up, being there, starting, go, get out of your
Hmm.
house, get out in front of this camera. Well, not now, not till we're done, and
Yeah.
then go and enjoy. Quit worrying about failure because I look, I'm. You would never know this, but if you saw me in high school, I was that introverted person. I
Mm.
was that little geek that would.
Hmm.
I love baseball. That was it.
Hmm.
College, same thing. Even with everything, I was still nervous to go
Yeah.
ask a girl for a date or for their number.
Yeah.
I probably missed. I know I missed out on a lot of opportunities
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah.
And
Fear can lock you down.
no, but the funny thing is, as I got older, and I started going, wait, what am I doing? And started going out forward, and
Hmm.
I failed at my marriage,
Hmm.
absolutely. But from that, I decided. The question I always ask is, what am I supposed to learn? God, what are you teaching me?
Hmm.
And then it opens my mind to be able to absorb what I'm supposed to learn because all it is an opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
And you go and you go and whatever happens, happens
Hmm.
and you don't worry about it. No, I love that.
Well, there's an
Um,
element too. If you're failing and learning, then you can hopefully pass that on.
yeah.
I've got, friends of mine that are guys that are, younger, and they might be, in a relationship. And I'm like, hey, for a guy who's failed at relationships and who hasn't, right? Then let's sit down and have a frank discussion on maybe some things where you've got blinders on, that you may be missing some red flags,
Yes. Yeah.
in both you and the relationship. So at least you're going, you can talk about it before commit.
It- and that's we don't know those. It's more or less like, look, I've been through the failure. Let me
Hmm.
show you my experience. It doesn't mean it's
Yeah.
going to relate to you. All it does is get you smarter. It's my kids, Callie, my daughter,
Yeah.
and Camden, my twins.
Hmm.
I've had some more candid conversations about my marriage and how I screwed
Yeah.
up, things that I've done, and
Hmm.
it's not to demean them or say yours is bad. It's just
Mm.
here's what I've learned. If I can
Yeah.
grace you with some knowledge, I will. Yeah.
Yeah. I told that to when he turned, I don't know, 12 or 13. I said, hey, okay, look, you and I are at the same level of maturity now, right?
Yeah.
And, we all have our 12-year-old, moments. And I
Poor
said,
guy.
look, I'm not being hypocritical. I'm just telling you, these are, I can see some handwriting on the wall. And I just want you to, you got to make your own mistakes, but at least don't make the same ones that I made.
Or if you do, learn from them quicker than I did.
Oh,
See
yeah.
them as they're happening because sometimes
Oh, yeah.
you've got kids. Sometimes you have to have that failure or that spot where you screw
Hmm.
up to be able
Hmm.
to. It's one of the things that I want to see. Now I'm going to say this and I'm going to be done with it. One of the things that I want to do for education, and I think education's missing out on, is exactly what we're talking about. There is no buy-in. So you have a relationship with
Um,
somebody. You have one with your son. When you have
hmm.
those conversations, there's a place of buy-in and trust
Yeah.
that is there. We don't have that in our education system. They're there
Mm.
because they're told to be there.
Yeah,
So
that's a shame too.
yeah,
Such an
because,
important job, profession.
yeah, but the biggest thing with the kids and education is, again, I'm going to say this and be done with it. But if you teach them purpose, thanks, Joey. If you teach
Hmm.
them purpose and how to understand and find their purpose, then they can connect that to where their path is clear,
Hmm.
creating
Yeah.
traction in their life. That's
Yeah.
myself. That's my pitch.
Hmm. Mm. That
No,
makes a
so
lot of sense.
yeah, and we're running out, and let's go ahead and tell on that. So we're looking at everything we do is about what makes you tick: trust, clarity, and traction.
Hmm.
What advice would you give the younger generation as a whole that the importance of trust, clarity, and traction?
Yeah, it's something where uh, I think there's this element where and gosh, I'm 55 years old. I feel like I'm saying this like I'm 85, but uh, there seems to be this over reliance on technology and screen time,
Yeah.
and this lack of ability to have social skills. I've talked at high schools and colleges, and I look at them like, some of the social awkwardness and stuff. It's hey, and you get out of that by practicing,
Yeah.
right? And engage with people, build your network. Um, and it's something where if you can just authentically connect with people and build those relationships. That's I always hated the term networking.
Yeah.
And Stacey Harris always got on to me about that because she did network in action. I said I don't mean it that way. Just don't be transactional.
Yeah.
Life is not about me handing you us exchanging business cards. It's about us learning about each other, talking. And then the best business is the kind that helps each other out. It's not
Yeah.
that you made a sale, it's that you solved a person's problem or issue by providing them with a product that works or a service that, you know, got something out of their way
Or connected
and
them to somebody that could
or
help them.
helped them out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's if you can find somebody who is selling something and who somebody who wants to buy, we if we own a house, you're gonna need a roof, right?
Yeah.
So you want to find a good roofer, a good and good friends that are gonna help you out and you can trust, and you're all good.
Yeah.
You're
No,
just building relationships with people.
and we were talking earlier, one, if you're going to hire somebody, generally you're going to lean to somebody that has a referral, somebody because
Yeah,
you know
it
that person.
helps.
So the same thing within business. So if you
Hmm.
have those facial conversations,
Hmm.
dude, and we this year in education was completely different. I I had a kid who in the middle of class, while we're having a conversation, I don't like to lecture. I want to
Hmm.
make an engaging conversation within
Hmm.
our. There's a bit of a lecture in it, but there's this kid raises his hand. I go, yeah. I thought he had a question. My mom's calling me. Can I answer the phone?
Oh,
I went,
okay.
no. Like there's no understanding of what that is. And it cracks me up. All right. We're almost out of time.
Yeah.
Actually, we're past time. I do want to ask you, do you know one of the, and this is just completely random because you said something earlier about Top Gun. Do you
Hmm.
have a line in a movie that sticks with you, but it's got to be a funny one?
Oh, geez. You know, uh, I've got several, and I'm not going to say them on air, but there's one, and and this goes to kind of my golfing buddies. If you guys haven't seen the movie Caddyshack, it's just a classic, and it's just kind of slapstick humor. It's got Rodney Dangerfield in it,
Yes.
and so I'll be playing golf with some friends, and invariably, because none of us are good at golf, even the guys that are professionals, look, they make a bogey on the last hole and lose a tournament. Tommy Fleetwood, that's the guy who
Tommy
missed that
Fleetwood.
putt.
Yes.
Yep,
Fleetwood Mac. Hmm.
yep, and somebody hit a bad shot, and you say, "Where'd they go?" Like, well, went right in the lumber yard because Chevy Chase owned lumber yards. He was playing golf, and he was mentoring this caddy, and the caddy hit a shot, and the guys, where'd he go? And Chevy Chase said he went right in the lumber yard.
Yeah. Yeah. God, I love that movie. They don't make the movies like that. It was
No.
awesome. Look, first of all, thank you guys for joining us today. I want to make sure that we invite the audience to connect, follow the
Mhm.
show, subscribe to What Makes You Tick. There is a Bryan's Tick Pulse newsletter. Look for that. Anything that we can do, look, reach out, find me or JJ. Any comments,
Mhm.
anything that you see, this will be on LinkedIn. It'll also be on my YouTube channel. Check it out. Any comments you have that can help us grow, I'm always open to anything. Either I'll look at you and go, yeah, that's awesome. Or I go, no, you're an idiot. No, I'm just kidding. Not really, but I will. Look, JJ, if you would, I mean, how active are you on LinkedIn?
I'm pretty active. I check it probably every day or two.
Perfect. No,
Mhm.
would you mind sharing your LinkedIn profile? How the audience can reach out to you?
Sure. I think if you just search for J period, and then Hollie with an IE,
Yeah.
you'll find me on that, and it'll be easy to connect.
Good. Yeah. And it's J period. Because if you put JJ Holly in, it won't come up.
Doesn't come up that way.
No, I keep doing the same thing. So
Yeah.
awesome. Look, you've been a great third guest on What Makes You Tick. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. This is a nice conversation. I knew it would be, so I appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be better with a couple beers, but that's a different story. That's not my podcast yet. Look, let's make an impact on the lives of the community through trust, clarity, and traction. One of the things, and this is just funny because you were going with transaction. One of my big things is be transitional over transactional anytime you can. You can find me on LinkedIn to stay connected. I'm always reaching out to anybody, connecting with anybody I can. So find me on LinkedIn. Look for future episodes, deeper conversation. JJ, it's been amazing. Thank you so much. Find my friend and connect with him. Next week, we'll have a conversation with an amazing woman. It should be really entertaining. I love her left side and her right side of the brain. Maggie Judge.
She'll be great.
Yeah, she'll be awesome. Thank you, guys. Have a fantastic week. See ya.
Bye, Bryan.
Bye.